Greetings and welcome to Jefficho Films. This 2017 French-Spanish sci-fi horror is directed by Xavier Gens and is based on a novel from 2002. It's also starring Ray Stevenson. So let's review Cold Skin. This movie starts out in 1914 with a young Irishman on a boat heading towards an island to take over as the weather official there. We're hit with a bit of a mystery on this island. I mean, there's no birds there, and then there's this little fountain that says Gruner owns this fountain. And they get to the house, spikes all around, kind of like defensive spikes around the house. And the captain follows them to the lighthouse, which also has a ton of defensive spikes around, and they have to break in. They meet Gruner, who's pretty unkempt, and he's played by Ray Stevenson. His hair is long, he's got a long beard, and he's buck naked when he first meets them. He's also pretty unfriendly, and he tells them that the old weather official died of typhus. And so he's not really giving them much information, so they walk out, and the captain offers Friend his gun.
Take this. Don't mistake stubbornness for stupidity.
I'll manage. Thank you for all you've done.
And so the captain makes his way off, very nice guy, and Friend makes his way back to his house, and that's where he sets up and prepares to study the wind intensity for the next 12 months and its direction. He unpacks his books. He's a big reader. You'd probably want to be stuck on an island for that long, and he finds Alder, the former weather official's journal, and he starts looking through it. It's got a lot of drawings where he's just cataloging life, but then it starts to get weird, where he starts drawing creatures birthing out of other creatures and people being devoured. Friend finds a lot of rock formations where it's just a big circle around a whole lot of shells in the middle, and he can see with his binoculars that Gruner just walks around the lighthouse naked. And then it gets dark, and something terrifying happens. There's something outside his house at night, with these clawed web hands reaching under his door. He steps on them and then he hides under his floorboards. The things break in, and he stabs one through the floorboards with his eyes. He's making enemies. Well, the next day, because he hides down there the whole night, the next day he finds these tracks that just lead out into the sand towards the beach. So he runs to the lighthouse and he demands answers from Gruner. Gruner told him he should have stayed on the boat, so that night he fortifies the house and he finds a rifle and he sets up. Before the glass gets broken by the creatures as they all swarm his house that night, and there's a lot of them, I noticed there's glass on his windows still. So this didn't happen to the last caretaker. He's firing his rifle, but that's not scaring any of them away. They're on the roof, they're breaking through the front door. He manages to light a fire that he had set up, planned, burns all around the house to protect the house. But then the house starts catching fire, so he has to bust through that front door and get out of there. Thankfully, it heavily rains, which kind of puts out the fire, but there's still a lot of fire damage on that house, which is a shame. It was a nice little cabin. He stalks Gruner the next day, but then he hides inside of a cave entrance to do so. That's a mistake. Even I knew that would be bad. Gruner says don't hurt it because it's kind of like a friendly pet to him, and then he decides to call him Friend, and that's how he gets his name, because he never gave his name before that. And then he helps him bring all the supplies over from this hut to the lighthouse, and he's got 1,862 bullets. That's going to do them pretty well, apparently. And he builds a little hammock, but there's no time to rest. Gruner tells him to grab the rifle and head upstairs to the top of the lighthouse. He says don't waste bullets, and don't shoot the wounded, because they will devour themselves. During the battle, Friend backs away in fear and just walks back inside and passes out. Gruner's out there just battling by hand after a while, and he's using his axe and his knife, and he's just killing the whole time. The next day, he's pretty pissed, and he tells Friend to go collect water because he's being dead weight, so he's gonna have to start working. When Friend comes back with the water, he finds Gruner upstairs fucking the blue female creature. That's not awkward, but it was one of the drawings in Alder's journal. Gruner comes downstairs and says he has one last chance tonight, so they rifle up. They fire off the flare and they stand on the balcony waiting, and Gruner locks him out there. Gruner just sits inside and listens to the fighting, the battling, and he falls asleep. He wakes up the next day to find Friend just covered in blood. but still alive. Friend's a good little battler. We get some of Friend's narration as he tells us they only come out at night, and he gets a little bit philosophical. He also decides that she's going to need a name if he's going to have to hear her get every night. So he gives her a name, Aneris. A lot of days and nights go by, and they're starting to bond, and they get a bit too complacent because they get attacked at night, and the creatures get inside, and they have to like battle their way up through the lighthouse, and they're losing ground and everything. Stevenson's got this sweet like blade on his shotgun, and he's just hacking people and blowing them up, but he gets pretty wounded on his leg. They manage to crawl up to the top of the lighthouse in this big glass case that they can't break through for some reason. And the light goes out, but thankfully the sun goes up and they go away. Aneris licks the wound on the leg because whatever something in her saliva is actually healing wounds, because she did that earlier for the other guy. Friend tells him that they can't survive another attack like that, and they're starting to get low on supplies. And he sees a boat off in the distance, and he goes to fire the flare, but Gruner stops him. So he drops some truce on Gruner.
You're too afraid to let your friends leave! Too afraid to kill your enemies! Afraid of having no one left to hate!
Aneris tries to protect Friend from Gruner, but Gruner punishes her pretty bad for that later. But Friend's pretty compassionate towards her, and he actually carves this little boat and shows it to her, and she takes him to a boat, and then he goes to tell Gruner about it. And Gruner already knew that there were dynamite smugglers, and a lot of them had sunk and some had made it ashore, but didn't last too long against these fishmen. So Friend decides, hey, why don't we go get some dynamite, and then we'll blow up all these fishmen. Gruner's against the idea, so Friend goes off and he's swimming in the stream. There's a lot of steam coming out of it, so it must be warm, but he's swimming there with Aneris, and Gruner sees this, and then later decides, yeah, we will go do this. I'll pump air into this underwater suit for you, and you can go get the dynamite. Seems like he's gonna kill him because he's getting jealous. So Friend goes underwater in this suit as Gruner's pumping air for him, and he hooks up a bunch of dynamite and takes it up there. But there's some fish creatures down there. They kind of look like children though. Still, the air stops coming and Friend falls down and has to break out of the suit and swim up. Gruner actually doesn't kill him. They see that some of the dynamite's corroded, but not all of it, so they plant a lot of it around the rocks, and it starts snowing that night. But they didn't come that night, and Gruner stayed outside the whole night with his hand on the detonator, and he just looks like a frozen corpse, but he's not dead. Friend brought him inside and warmed him up. He thinks that Aneris is a spy, though, and that's why they didn't come. But Friend defends her and says no, she's with us. Gruner decides he wants to go with a more dangerous plan, as they have a second row of dynamite that's much closer to the lighthouse than it should be, and he wants to leave the front door open and invite the creatures in and start picking them off with the rifle before he, releases the dynamite and blows everything up. And that happens, and they all get in there, but it doesn't explode. It doesn't. So Friend has to run up there, he has to re-hook it up, and then they finally explode, and the big explosion around kills so many of the creatures. But Gruner, in a panic, explodes the second row, which is way too close, and it knocks them all out. Friend's the first one to wake the next day, and he quotes some really cool poem before they go downstairs, and they just start killing the survivors. And Friend even notices that they have a necklace on there, very tribal, like this is actually a culture out there. Gruner tells Friend that he set Aneris free, but that she'll come back because she always does. And Friend goes out there and he sees a couple of kids playing around, so he builds this big rock circle and he puts a shell of the boat thing in the middle, and then he goes away and he comes back and sees that the kids are playing with it. Gruner shows up and he sees the kid and Aneris and a bunch of the blue creatures, and Friend tells him that he thinks they want a truce. Gruner yells at Aneris and says, "Get back inside," because he's angry that she left him. Gruner shoots the young child with this flare that he loaded with a bunch of gunpowder from a dynamite and just explodes on the kid and kills him. It's pretty sad to see. And so Friend goes and attacks him and he fights him, but Gruner's a lot stronger than he is. And just before he kills Friend shouts out his wife's name that he read on one of these pictures. And Gruner just stops. And, he gets up and he walks out. Friend closes the door, grabs his hatchet, and just falls asleep there, just in case, with the hatchet. A year must have gone by because now he's got a full beard and long hair, and the replacements have shown up, and they've got a lot of boats with them. My God, there's a war going on, man. And they're like calling him Mr. Gruner, and in their defense, he kind of looks like Gruner. And that's where this ends. I kind of expected the creatures to deploy different battle strategies as they were, would be learning from the other ones, but they never did. You would think because they were tribal and they actually had a culture that they would actually come up with different strategies and trick them and maybe even lay a trap. That would have been pretty cool to see. We also never got to see anybody go into the caves other than that first time when he's just standing at the entrance and explore and see what was down there. That would have been another cool thing because they actually swam around the oceans. Even when all the ships showed up at the end, you could see them like they're swimming under the ships. So that was kind of neat. Also, character development was pretty limited in this. Stevenson was pretty good, but like I would have liked to have known more of like maybe a flashback of him and his wife and what happened between them that made him like come to this island and become a lighthouse keeper and just live on his own as a miserable bastard and then actually enjoy killing all these creatures. It's like it was his punishment that he stayed there and he didn't want to kill the creatures. That's why he didn't want to blow them up at first with the dynamite, because he felt like that was his punishment and his creatures are eventually going to get to him, but he has to just keep fighting for that. The cinematography was great. The island itself just was very beautiful at times, and the water just crashed on the shore. The ocean looked really nice. The CGI was really good on the creatures for the most part. So overall, this being a French-Spanish joint film, it definitely had a different feel to it. I think the Irishman could have been a little more curious, and that would have made him a bit more interesting. The story was just kind of basic. It was just a lot of attacks. It's like something that they should have built up towards, but it was just night after night of attack. And that could have been cool, but there was just nothing more to it. It's a very basic story, so I can't really say you should go out and watch this, but you might enjoy it if you're just looking for something simple, and it is beautifully shot, so if you're into that kind of thing, go for it. As always, thanks for watching.